Hello everybody, welcome to this week's onboard story by David Perrell. We are at Monza in the rain, Blancpain GT Series. Big thanks to my sponsors, Thrustmaster. Thank you to Blancpain for letting me show you guys this stuff. This was the first round of the year in the Endurance Series in April, and the race was super wet. Usually Monza is a bright and shiny race. But here we are with super spray, not much to see in front of me. And what you see in the camera is pretty accurate of what we saw in real life. Just at the start here, we started under the safety car, almost lost it there, braking for turn 1. This is after the safety car restart. We didn't have an amazing qualifying because of a technical issue in Q2, so we were relatively far down the grid. So I had to sort of fight my way up. Generally, the Ferraris are not the quickest in the rain, primarily because we tend to lack a bit of front-end grip when it's cold conditions, and obviously when it's cold and raining, that's a bit of a recipe for not knowing sort of where your front end is. So we were superior under braking, but where we struggled a little bit was in the longer corners and in direction changes. Anyway, here we're still fighting through with a couple of AMP drivers going down the inside here into Lozma 1. Obviously it's the first race of the year. There's an element of wanting to be careful because, you know, it's a long championship, and the last thing you want to do is, especially because I was the starting driver, you don't want to bin this thing in the first hour of the season. So there's a bit of a measured approach to how you go through, how you go about this, but at the same time, obviously you want to make up as many positions as you can. We had the windscreen wipers on here because of the spray and everything, but I generally don't like to drive with the wipers on. However, because the spray was so intense, I did leave them on for a little bit, and then throughout the race I sort of turned them on and off. It's a random observation, but it's something that, I don't know, just kind of drives me mad when I see drivers when the circuit is dry, there's no more rain, and the windscreen wiper is busy destroying their windscreen. So I avoid that wherever possible. This was our first race of the year in the Silver Cup. We were considering doing the Pro-Am Championship in the Endurance, but in the end we went with myself, Denis Bulatov, who is another silver driver, and my other teammate Rinat Salikov. We've been racing together the whole year. I wanted to show you guys this onboard because it's just so insane how crazy the spray is. Here we are heading down the front straight. I can't really see where the other guys are. I'm trying to move left and right. Obviously where there is more spray, there's generally a car there. Here you can see the red braking lights popping up. I dived down the inside. This move was super optimistic. Luckily the Lamborghini saw me. I can't quite remember the details, but I think I kind of misjudged my braking and had no choice but to try and send it down the inside and hope that it didn't turn in. Running now around the outside of Curva Grande. Some guys do the inside, I do the outside, and then braking for the inside of the second chicane. So for those of you who are wondering, who are not very familiar with wet driving, you actually try and stay off the regular racing line, and the reason is a lot of oil from the tires and the cars builds up on the line, and then when the water falls, obviously that starts to separate from the track, and you have this horrible greasy sort of feeling on the regular racing line. So you tend to drive a little bit off the regular racing line, and we call it the wet line or the karting line, just to find spots on the track which are not as oily as what you would on the racing line. So that's why you see these sort of strange lines that are occurring. And for those of you who play sim racing games, one of the key things I always look for is when they have dynamic conditions and wet conditions, is there more grip on the line or off the line in the wet conditions? And if there's more grip on the line, then there's a fundamental and misunderstanding of what it means to race in the rain. Obviously, if the track is a newly surfaced racetrack, like for example beginning of last year, Paul Ricard was resurfaced, and twice now Silverstone has been resurfaced, then the regular racing line does produce enough grip because there's no oil on that section of the track. So here we are exiting Parabolica, super difficult to get the power down. If you got the line wrong, you would just be power sliding and sort of four-wheel drifting the whole way through the corner and losing a lot of acceleration. We were a little bit top speed limited because in the wet we jacked up the rear wing, so we had maximum rear grip, but that obviously affects top speed. You also have the drag of the wet tire and the water on the track itself. So here was another super optimistic move. I did a little bit of a corner cut there, my mistake. Luckily no big impact or anything like that. Again, I aquaplaned on the braking zone and sort of was not in complete control of my braking there, and ended up touching the Audi on the door, but there was no damage to either car. We didn't even have any damage to our aero flick up, so luckily in the range, if you touch someone and it's at the right speed, you tend to just slide away from each other because there's that little grip of the tires. So eventually he runs a little bit wide, but I don't quite think I get in front of him. He just cuts the corner and keeps going. That's fair game. I wouldn't say he really gained an advantage because I wasn't trying to overtake him either, and he was a touch faster than me. The move I was going for was a little bit optimistic. There you could see I had understeer going into Lesmo 1 and then snap oversteer on the exit. That's classic of people getting, of the car just being a little bit front limited. It can look from the outside like you're actually rear limited because of the snap oversteer, but it all comes from understeer at the beginning, so that's something for everyone who's watching this and wants to set up their cars in sim racing to keep that in mind. Always think about what happens at the beginning of the corner because that usually causes all the other problems. So anyway, something to keep in mind. Going through what corner is that? I've forgotten now. The final chicane. It's going to come to me. Onto the back straight. A lot of guys on the exit there can crash to the inside wall in the dry or the wet, so you always need to be quite careful. You can see the spray here is pretty intense, but I'm going to pause for a bit and see if we catch the guys in front and then pick this up in a few seconds. Up again, and what's happening is in front is that the guys are starting to battle, which is one of my favorite situations. You always want to try and capitalize on the guys slowing each other down so that you can get a run on them at some point and try and overtake them. So their fighting is bringing them towards me. Again, I wasn't one of the quickest drivers in these conditions on this day, so I was one part frustrated, but it was obviously nice to catch up to the Pro Ferrari entry. This one was being driven by Michele Aleshin, Miguel Molina and Davide Rigon. So to catch the Pro Ferrari meant that yes, we were struggling a little bit with pace compared to the Audis and Lamborghinis specifically, but it was nice to know that we were one of the faster Ferraris on track. And in all GT racing, that's kind of what you look for because of the BOP element. Your first priority is obviously to be one of the fastest guys in your own team, and then you look to the other teams using the same type of car, same manufacturer. So then you look to all the Ferrari teams, and then after that you start to look where you are overall. Getting a decent run out of Parabolica, a little bit of snap oversteer on the power again. Aleshin has the run, but my favorite points in these conditions was braking for the first chicane and braking for the second chicane. So I'm kind of eyeing out those two corners as possible overtaking maneuvers. Going now down the inside on the track, this is also an element of avoiding any aquaplaning. Plus I can see their lights, I can see where they are braking when I'm right behind them, and that tends to just help me with the reference points, because if you are in the spray and you're just slightly offline, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to judge the distances. Getting on the power here as smooth as I can. Remember, we do have traction control in the GT3 cars. This is pretty important to note, and sometimes in the wet, depending on the kind of GT3 car you have, it can be a little bit too aggressive. So in this case I actually turned my traction control almost off. It's on like 2 and 2, which is basically nothing, and just trying to manage everything with my foot. So here, getting a pretty good run on the exit of the second chicane, and going here to the inside of Lesmo 2. So we are officially, I think at this point we were the first Ferrari in the race, which was pretty cool, but I was still a bit frustrated with the pace. We're going to skip now a little bit towards the middle of the race, where I'm trying to hunt down an Aston Martin. Going here down the main straight, I think we catch him the next lap. Definitely, I mean, if I overtake from here, that's going to be the dive bombs of all dive bombs. So I'll just pause and let you watch a lap without me commentating, and we'll pick it up when we get back to the Aston. So here we are heading onto the main straight. Caught one of the Garage 59 Aston Martins, and I seem to have a really good run. I don't know, run down the straight. I don't know if they missed a gear or something on the exit of Parabolic, or didn't have a good exit specifically. But now heading into the first chicane and braking sort of as late or as comfortably as I can without missing the corner, locking the rears a little bit and getting the move done. Going a little bit wide on the first section of the chicane, but in trying to get back off the racing line so that I have superior traction on acceleration, and getting the move done. We're now going to hunt down the group in front. I think they were quite clustered. But what happens next is there was a long safety car period, or full course yellow and safety cars, so we're just going to run through that and pick up the action again. Here we are in the safety car on the fast forward, and we're going to a safety car restart. Kind of stressful because, again, we were struggling with tire temperatures and keeping temperatures in the front tires up. So when there's a safety car, all your temperatures are going to drop and you're going to start to struggle a little bit. So we had to be super wary and do as good a job as possible as warming up the fronts in preparation for the restart. The track was still super wet. It did not stop raining the whole weekend. The whole day on the Sunday. But luckily we did have some testing on the Friday or Thursday in wet conditions. So this gave us, all the teams, some idea of what setups to run. I had a good slipstream here on the Audi. Here I manually switch on as you can see, the windscreen wipers were off, and I manually just wiped it again there. Going around the outside, hoping that this Ferrari in front of me doesn't block my line, which he ends up doing. And I couldn't quite tell if this Ferrari was one that we were lapping. As you can see there's an AM sticker on it. I wasn't notified of this car. My exit of the first chicane wasn't so good, and the Audi gets a much better exit. He probably maximized the curb on the second left-hander, got better traction and got the run. But then there was a black BMW, also an AM car, which was letting the lap guy we were lapping him, so he was letting us through, and that blocked the Audi's path. Going down in the second chicane, we could use the curbs a lot. And funnily enough, in the dry you can't use the curbs in the Ferrari. That will kick you wide, and you want to sort of maximize the aero efficiency. But when it's raining, that sort of goes away, so you start to use the curbs a lot more aggressively, almost like the Porsche guys. Funny enough, when it's raining they don't use the curbs as much, but in the dry they do. So that's a strange one. Lesmo 2 here, you've got to be super careful. Our car was involved in a heavy accident on the Saturday on the exit of Lesmo 2, which required the guys to do an insane job to rebuild the car before Sunday. Everything was fine, luckily. It was just mostly cosmetic. It just looked terrible, but overall the car was okay, and it was a small mistake. by one of my co-drivers. I felt sorry for the guy because it was the first race of the season, but luckily there was no big damage. Okay, here we go. I still can't remember the name of this corner, even though I test here quite a lot. Heading down now to Parabolica, and gonna try just stay as close as I can. Braking a little bit late and starting to lose the brakes a little bit. Everything is fine though. As you can see on the outside there was possibly a yellow flag, so being a bit more conservative than usual, and now getting the slipstream for what it's worth in the rain, and obviously going to think about that move around the outside into the first chicane. So I caught a bunch of cars in front of me and one of them ran wide. There was a lot of battling going on. The safety car brought everyone back into play. Going through now, and I remember the corner, Ascari. And because of the battling in front, I've managed to catch up to them, and I'm definitely thinking of picking off more places. Keep in mind that this is a 3-hour race, so a lot of the time the driver who's going last, in this case it was going to be our other silver driver, Denis Bulatov, it's usually the job of the third driver to make up sort of the most positions towards the end of the race. And the first driver has to consolidate, obviously be aggressive at the start, but bring the car back to the next pit stop. The middle driver consolidates and the third driver goes full attack, and we try and chase down a podium. So in this case, all these positions that I'm gaining are bonuses, as much as I want to be aggressive as possible. Going here around the outside again of turn 1, every time I turned into this first chicane, I was worrying if the guy was going to hit me. I lost the rear a little bit there, and then get big snap oversteer when I get on the power for the exit. So I lose a lot of time to the guys in front, but I did gain this position, which is super important for the sort of duration or the long-term prospects of the race. The more positions I can gain at the beginning, the less work Denis has to do at the end. Rinat can consolidate in the middle, and yeah, hopefully you come out with a good position. Unfortunately, in this race it wasn't meant to be though. We had a really good start, obviously, but we had a strategy mix-up in the pit stop and went onto the wrong tires for the middle stint. Rinat did a phenomenal job to stay on slick tires in wet conditions and not lose that much time, but we got caught out by a safety car just after his pit stop, which put us a lap behind, and once you're a lap behind in a 3-hour race, it's game over. In the end, Denis got in the car for the final stint and was phenomenally quick. He was one of the top 5 fastest drivers and managed to overtake, I don't know, after looking at his onboard video, I think he overtook like 100 cars, it felt like. So we definitely had the pace for a podium in this first race of the year, but that wasn't meant to be. Nonetheless, you can see that here the conditions are drying up quite a bit, but we are going to skip ahead a little bit because I couldn't quite catch this group of cars in front of me at this very moment. So we're just going to run ahead and try as best as I can to catch up to the guys in front. Even though they were fighting each other, they weren't boxing, so they were actually overtaking each other quite smoothly. Okay, skipping now, we caught up to them a little bit, but I make a small mistake here, frustratingly. I go into the green, it sucks me out wide, and I lose a position to the overall winning Porsche. So this Porsche that overtook me here, you can see that we're in the same position on track, but in the end they actually went on to win this race, and I couldn't quite tell. You can go back in the replay here and see if that is the actual Porsche that was in the gravel. So I think we overtook this Porsche when it ran wide into the gravel, and then I ran wide a little bit into Parabolica and lost some positions, and in the end that's the Porsche that ended up winning this race. So they had a lot of pace here, but as you can see, the number 4 Black Falcon Mercedes got spun around, and because of our poor traction on the Exeter corners, I lose so much time to the other guys. Even though there's a lot of bunching up, you usually want to maximize those positions. And here we have a full course yellow, which was actually some massive confusion. Is it full course yellow? You see even now watching. So yes, everybody slows down. It's a full course yellow right now. It was because of that spin. They thought that the Black Falcon wasn't going to get going, so they were considering to release a safety car. And during this time, everyone in front of me is on the radio saying, okay, it's probably going to be a quick full course yellow, but at some point the officials release the full course yellow sign and don't tell any of the team members. And as you'll see here, I think, yes, it goes green, a couple of cars overtake us, and it was basically a bunch of us got caught out by the fact that there was no call for the green flag. So while I was on the team radio, at some point in those few seconds, the track went green again. Now usually the full course yellow lasts at least 30 to 40 seconds. In this case it was maybe 10 to 15 seconds, and after that little event we spoke with the officials, or all the drivers did, and they agreed to never do that again, because it was actually in some ways not entirely fair, because the intention of the full course yellow is to neutralize the race so that incidents on track can be cleaned up, and this wasn't the case in this situation. So I lost that place to Aleshin, but we are going to skip a little bit forward as we do catch back up to him, but we're now approaching my pit stop window. So it's a case of, do we risk it and overtake him, or just stay with him now and make sure that I deliver on my priorities, which is to bring the car back to our second driver, which is Rinat Salikov. So again, the track is much drier now. There is a little bit of drizzle, but at this point we are discussing on the radio whether to use wet tires or dry tires, and one of the potential calls was that we should go to dry tire but then use Denis Bulatov in the middle stint, and then if it keeps raining, then we'll use Rinat for the final stint on wet tires, if it keeps drying up. But what we did was we called for the wets, and then we decided to put Rinat in the car. The problem is, 15 minutes after his pit stop, it started to rain. Not hard, but enough that it would have been better to be on the rain tire. And then what happened after that was there was a safety car, which meant the slick tires lost their temperature completely, and then we lost all our hard work. So it was a bit of a tough one, but I mean, this is a insane introduction back into Blancpain GT racing, an insane start to the season. It was really, really fun during the stint. Overtook a lot of people and was quite satisfying. So thank you first of all to all my patrons who support me on my channel. Thank you to everybody who was watching. Thank you again to my sponsors, Thrustmaster, also to Blancpain for letting me use this footage. And yeah, if you enjoyed that, please like it and share it, and I'll catch you around the next lap. Cheers.